Hey guys, Truth Waves here. What was it? So I wanted to make a longer video. Whew, man, I I genuinely have been, going through it, mentally and spiritually speaking. I feel like there's just a lot been going on in my life. But something that I've been wanting to talk about is is the culture that we as people, as a society, you know, breathe and breed here in America. And it's a culture of deception, it's a culture of lies, corruption on so many different levels. I can go into pretty much any field of topic, and eventually you'll hit something and it's like, well, that explains it. That explains why there's an issue that is essentially breaking, people apart from living better lives. Now, what I mean by that is people as a whole here in America, from what I've experienced, from what I've seen across my travels, talking, just experiencing life, is that they're struggling. Now, our struggles are all different, yet I've seen similar struggles. And in a way, it's a pandemic. It's a pandemic of just evil, and it's not just you know me. It's not just you know singular in the right that it's like, oh, I'm alone in this. No, you're not alone in that. It's not just you that's going through it. There's plenty of people that are out there that are going through it within your community, and you may not know. And going to the aspect of what I mean by corruption and evil at all different levels, I'll give you an example. So within America, we're a nation that thrives on capitalism, right? Think about most grocery stores that you go to, or not even a grocery store. Let's say you go to a fast food restaurant or a pizza place, somewhere out to eat, right? Right. Now, if you've noticed, there has been an obvious steep, steep price hike that has affected, you know, yourself. You're like, wow, I used to go out, buy a pizza for like $5. Now, mind you, this is pretty accurate, at least for my case, and I'm pretty sure other people that are out there too. Because back in 2018, mind you, I was 17 years old. I was in the middle of the desert out in 29 Palms, California. I could order a medium two topping pizza from Domino's for $5. $5, mind you. Now, fast forward to today. Where is that price sitting? I'm spending roughly $10 on a two topping medium pizza. And not only am I spending double the price, but the taste is different. The quality has changed. And that's just Domino's. Now, I'm not trying to discredit Domino's entirely. I'm just giving a small example in that right. And it's not just Domino's, it's other companies as well. And it's a vast majority of companies here in America. Why? Ask yourself this. Think about this process. Is why have prices doubled in less than 10 years? In less than 10 years, they've doubled. When in the past, prices went up. Yeah, of course. Over time, so to speak. But did they increase at that rate? Now, this goes in conjunction with what I'm about to say. And for most people, it's obvious. Most, from what I can tell, is that while these prices have doubled, yeah, and you don't need to go out to eat all the time, sure. It goes back to the whole grocery store bit. You go to the grocery store, and what used to be, I would say, a decent price, a fair price for eggs. I remember, a dozen eggs. It was like $2. Again, has doubled. Now, why is that? That's just another example. That's a small example right there. All right. And coupled with the fact that most Americans, mind you, most Americans here can barely afford to make it on by. And what I mean by that is that they're working jobs that can barely sustain them. And with that being said, those jobs aren't paying enough. In essence, uh, I'll state the fact, and not everyone knows this, but in the state of Texas, the minimum wage has stayed 7.25 for the longest time and has not changed. And yet, I'm supposed to pay double of what something was worth less than 10 years ago, running off not minimum wage, but essentially minimum wage. Because I know a handful of people that work, $12 an hour, $15 an hour, 14, 17. And even then, it's like, all right, they got to cut corners here and there. They got to cut stuff out. And I'm not saying life is supposed to be easy, but there's something wrong with that. And when you really look into it, somewhere down the line, there is an individual or many individuals that are corrupt, that are deceivers, that take advantage of people. And it rolls down the hill. It was a common saying in the Marine Corps is shit rolls downhill. So, in essence, these people or groups of people have allowed the shit to roll downhill to people that are on the bottom. And the sad thing about it is that the people on the bottom, they get in a mindset where they're stuck and they can't do anything about it. Now, that's also a choice. We have the choice to overcome. We have a choice to live better. And it's hard. It's not easy. But within all of that, like I said, there's corruption. This right here is just a little bit of what is, causing in what I would say a cultural crisis here in America. And it's sad. It's sad to see. It's sad to experience. And yes, I'm going to keep pushing forward. But there's some people out there that don't know this or can't understand or grasp the idea of what's going on. And they're like, what? Everything's fine. Everything's fine. No, everything is not fine. And what really led me to this, topic is the fact that I was watching the news this morning that suggested that people my age are just completely lazy, don't want to do anything. And to a point, somewhat accurate. But there's reasons, and some say, oh, you can't make excuses. But there's reasons for the decline in judgment, the decline in reality, the decline in morality. And that involves the culture that we breathe and breed here in America. And it comes down to deception, lies, and corruption. Straight to the point. There is evil that is out there, and it is rampant here in America. And it's hard to get past that. So, that was just part of it. And within that as well, they were saying that a lot of people my age don't want to get married, don't want to have kids, don't want to settle down. Now, whether that is accurate or not, I'm not sure. And the reason why I say that is because I might be an outlier in that. I have wanted to settle down. I've wanted to have kids. I believed in marriage at one point. However, now in my life, I'm turning away from that. So I guess I am part of the statistic now, is that I don't want that. However, the reasoning that they explained on the news is that it's because of the financial situation that America is in, especially for younger people. Now, I'll put this into perspective. And again, I could be the outlier. I own a home. At one point, I had 5 cars. I had stable income. I was making roughly, 2,500 bucks a month. Even more than that when I was in the military. When I was in the military, I was making 6K a month. Think about that. I was 22 years old making 6K a month. And then I got kicked out. And then I found another job. And like I said, I was making 2,500 a month. And the woman that I wanted to settle down with, that I loved, and I still love her, she lied to me. There was deception involved. And in essence, there was corruption in the relationship. And that impacted me. And now, in my life, I'm in a time of healing, time of change, focus on God, even more so. And that's just me, though. I'm just explaining my story in that. And a lot of the young men that I've talked to, it's not the fact that their financial situation is the reason why they aren't married or in a relationship and have kids. You know, I'll throw another example. It's a biased example, but it's my cousins. Two of my cousins. They have 4 kids. They have a man. Is their financial situation the best? No, not at all. None whatsoever. But they still have kids. Now, why is that? Well, culture. It's the culture that is breathed here in San Antonio. It's constant. I call it, in my opinion, I call it the ghetto culture. And I'm not like that. I don't like it. It's not who I am. It's a style. It's an identity that people follow. But I'm going down a rabbit hole with that. The young men that I have talked to have gone through similar situations as me. They wanted to have a family. They wanted to have kids. They wanted to be married. And they were lied to. They were cheated on. They were deceived. There was corruption within their relationships. And it's not just young men that this happens to. It happens to young women too. They're lied to. They're deceived. And there was corruption within that relationship. Now, you're probably wondering, where am I going with this? Well, think about it. Where did the lies and the corruption and deception come from? Where was the seed planted? How was the seed planted? I'll give you another example. Well, I'll give you an example of where it came from. Social media. Social media is a big, big factor within that. People here in America are especially susceptible because it's indoctrinated. It's commonplace. It's common culture that's accepted. Parents allowing their kids to have phones at a young age, have iPads, and just hand it to them. And it's not just that. It's the education system that we have here that implements technology at a very young age. Now, I'm not against technology. However, I have my own thoughts on how it should be implemented. However, there's not as much control as there should be here in America when it comes to our children and the way that we implement those technologies. Now, there's that, right? Explaining why they're susceptible. Because that's all they have. They have in front of them. Boom, they got their screen. They're watching whatever video it is. They're absorbing that information. And not just them, just people in general here, they get on their phones and they absorb information. And absorb and absorb and absorb. And I'm guilty of it too. I remember growing up, I was against having a phone. And the only reason I got a phone was so then that way I could do my courses that were from school online. I had to get a phone. So then that way I could turn in my assignments. And I was what? I was 15 at the time, you know? So, looking at that, before then, the way that I absorbed my information was from my environment, from my surroundings, reading books, reading material. You know, I talked to my grandmother, my Meemaw, about it, and I was like, man, do you remember those National Geographic books? I used to read the National Geographic books all the time. Book fairs always used to have them. And you'd go and you'd buy one or buy two or buy a few, you know, and then you just read them as a little kid, you know. I'm not saying every kid needs to read, you know, all the time. However, through the implementation of the technology that we have, people watch videos and absorb it and absorb. And in a way, partially and mostly, it takes away from the imagination of an individual. Because when you're reading a book, you know, you're essentially telling the story to yourself, and you're perceiving it through your eyes, through your lens. You know, you may not understand all the words, but that's how you learn and that's how you grow and you develop that within yourself. And that's how I was able to, you know, advance myself in school. You know, I skipped a grade. I could have skipped 2 grades, but the principal said no, you know. And I'm not saying that's everyone that's out there that has that capability, because not everybody has that capability. But with here in America, all of that has a play into the susceptibility of evil, of the culture that is thriving on deception and corruption and constant lies that are just fed through our technology that we have. And I don't blame the young men and women here in America. However, it does come down to the individual to go through it all and say, no, I'm not going to accept that. I'm not going to accept the lies and the evil that's out there. And that's where God comes into play. And some people out there are like, I don't believe in God, or I believe in God or a higher power, but, you know, I don't go to church, or I don't, you know, read, you know, the Bible. And that in of itself is a is a problem right there. Is that there's not a renewing of faith, a reassurance. And it has to do with families as well. Because these parents allow the technology. And they're going through it too. It's not just the kids. It's not the, you know, just the young men and women. It's the older generations. We're all going through it. However, the younger generation is the most susceptible, because whenever you were young or younger, information is absorbed easier. And your mind is more malleable. So think about it this way. All these young people are going around, living their lives, absorbing the evil information, this evil content, accepting it as truth. The parents are going through it too, accepting it as truth and allowing that into their homes. And it breaks the family apart. It breaks people down. And it's not just family, it's the community. The community as a whole, whether it be a small town, whether it be a big city, it does not matter. The evil is running rampant here in America. And it's going to get worse. It will. It is a guarantee. And some people argue with me in that fact. They say, "Oh, do you have little faith?" And I say, "No, I do have faith. I have faith in knowing that what will occur will occur." And what I mean by that is that everything will lead to Christ coming back. And through that all, evil will continue to run rampant. Sin will continue to run rampant. However, it's a big however, there will be people that wake up. There will be people that realize that this is a problem. And not in, not entirely change their ways, but they'll turn away from their ways. Turn away from the evil. Turn the other cheek, as the saying goes. Look towards God in their faith. Look towards God in everything that they do. So, in essence, what I'm trying to get at is that it's not the financial situations that are causing young men and women to not be settled down or stable, so to speak. That's just a catalyst for it. That's a catalyst for them not being stable. They mentioned laziness, sloth. Being a sloth is a sin. Not going out and doing works, not for yourself, not for necessarily the community, but for God, and looking towards that with God, with all your heart, with all your soul, and who you are as an individual, having that individual relationship that aligns with God. And I'm working on that myself, and I'm going through the process. However, I'm simply stating what's already out there and what it will occur. And what I mean by it will occur is God will come back. God's already here with us in our hearts, in our souls, connected with those that believe, that choose to believe, that choose to turn away from the evil that is running rampant here in America. And it's not just America, it's the whole world. However, America specifically right now at this moment is, again, extremely susceptible to this because we as a society are accepting a culture that is counter to living a life for God. And mind you, what I mean is that we live it for ourselves. Like, oh, I did this, I did this, I did this. This is for me, this is. And even the people that will say, oh, no, that's not me. Part of it, even unknowingly, we accept that. We have that selfish nature. And we have to do our best to turn away from that. And it's hard, and it is a process. And again, it's also a choice. It's a willingness to change, to do better, but not that's not the focus is doing better. The focus is living a life more aligned with God. That's the focus. Having that individual connection. That right there is the biggest priority, and I'm getting excited about it because it's true. It is real. I have experienced it. I have, you know, joy through the sorrow. I have joy through the pain and all these things that come my way. There are so many different verses, and I don't even have them memorized, but people will talk about it though. I walk through the shadow, the valley of death. But God is with me. God has given me the power to trample on snakes and scorpions and serpents and go through it all. My enemies will turn away. They will falter because I am aligned with God. Everything is meaningless in my life without God. God sent his only son, only son, to come here on this planet, this earth, this this world filled with sin, that runs rampant of sin, to give the ultimate sacrifice. And it is the ultimate sacrifice. Think about it this way. Everyone talks about it. The ultimate sacrifice is giving your life for your brother or sister. And that's not, you know, your actual brother and sister. Everyone. We're all brothers and sisters here on this planet, here on earth. And what Jesus did was give his life. He's like, you know what? This is the modern context to it, so to speak, slang, I guess, is that Jesus was like, whoa, 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 hey guys, hey, this is the way. Follow. Do as I do. Go in the steps that I take. Have faith in me. Believe in me. Trust in me. And your path will be set straight. Just because your path is set straight does not mean that you won't face obstacles. You won't face, um, so to speak, hurdles. There's still that nature of the earth that's here. However, following with God, believing, choosing a willingness to go with God, your path is set straight and you have comfort, you have joy. And there's so much more to it than that. He who has faith in me is shielded. Shielded. It's one of the Psalms or the Proverbs, I believe. And earlier I mentioned, life is ultimately meaningless without God. Your treasures mean nothing, whether you be the lowly or you're up on a hill. You're up on a pedestal of your own demise. No matter what, the sun will set, the wind will blow, the leaves will fall. No matter what, that will occur. And yet, if you have no faith, if you do not choose to believe, what then? Life is ultimately meaningless. Because there is nothing. There is nothing that you truly have. And I can go on and on. And I love talking about it. That's the thing, is God's given me that heart, that the spirit to talk about these things and share these things with people and bring that into the community. And that's not only my, passion. However, it's to get the thought process or dynamic of other individuals to shift in a more positive manner, a more manner that is aligned with God. And even if I'm just, speaking through YouTube, speaking through social media, I'm planting seeds. And I'm doing the best that I can do. And that's what we're called to do. Do your best to be as one that is approved with God. Unashamed of who you are and the work that you do. And ultimately look towards God in everything that you are and everything that you do. And it is a constant process, a constant, shaving away of your old self. Being one with God is not simply saying, I am a Christian. No, no. Being one with God is fully accepting Jesus. Fully, stepping in and being like, yeah, I do believe. I do have faith. And I choose to live with you. Choose to live within that realm, that identity that you have in that relationship. And that's the problem we have in America. That's a dynamic, so to speak, a thought process that is shunned, that is discouraged. And it's discouraged through judgment, it's discouraged through dishonesty, it's discouraged through the environment that we're in, that is cultivated. And through it all, God still loves each and every one of us. God has the ultimate power, not us, not me, not you, not a king, not a president. It does not matter. Because living a life with God, it's eternal. There's peace, there's joy in it. Is there turmoil? 100%. There's always going to be, in some way, shape, or form, turmoil. And that's because of the sin that's within this world, the sin that continues to live on. And we're called to turn away from that sin. We're called to live by faith and walk in faith and to love not only yourself, but love, most importantly, God and the people around you. We're called to serve in ways that God will lead us to. We're not called to hold in all our possessions. And it's not even physical. It's not just excluded to physical possessions. It's the emotional aspect. It's your physical, you yourself. It's your spiritual nature. You're not called to hold on to all of that. We're called to prayer. We're called to worship. We are called to worship every single waking moment in our lives. And if you think about it, that's honestly a pretty cool thing. It really is. Oh, man. Because really, really, we are here living our lives and we're all sinners. And yet, God loves us and wants us to come to Him in everything that we are, everything that we do, everything that we have going on. We're called to bring that to the table, bring that to God. And again, I am working on that. It is a process. But like I said before, when you have that faith, when you choose to believe that willingness to say, yes, God, yes, Lord, I will follow, your path will be set straight. And not everyone will choose to choose to live that. And that's why it's a narrow path. It's a narrow path to follow into heaven. It's not a wide path that is completely, just like a canyon of just everyone just walking through. No. Because there are people that are not going to choose to follow that. And that's okay. That's okay. But within this, what I'm truly trying to get at is, as Americans, as people that are living their lives, that are struggling or aren't struggling, that we have things going on in our lives that we may not comprehend, or we do comprehend. We need to turn away from lies that we've accepted. We need to turn away from the anguish and the sinful nature of the culture, and focus on God and cultivate that within ourselves, most importantly, with the people around us, meaning your family, your coworkers, your community, and just thrive with that and keep pushing forward, staying true, doing the best that you can with God. That's what's most important. And what's more to it besides staying true and staying blessed? Amen.